Welcome to the Innovative Revenue Leader podcast. I'm your host, Seth Mars. Join me as we deliver practical insights to help B2B CROs find new and innovative ways to grow in this fast-changing environment. The Innovative Revenue Leader is sponsored by Sandler, a Trilliad company, empowering sales professionals and leaders to master the craft of selling at all levels. Sandler's releasing a new solution. It's called the Sales Performance Ecosystem, and it enables companies to ensure the adoption of their training and make sure that the skills that they invest in convert into revenue.
We had gone kind of work with numerous B2B kind of revenue organizations. And what excites me right now is the increasing potential of, call it AI, right, or agents or technology to kind of maybe take revenue to the next level. And what I mean by this is everybody's using like a Claude or OpenAI or something for personal productivity, like write me an email or whatnot. This is happening all the time. And what's happening when you sort of systemize it with a system, again, such as Gong, but in general, the capability of a system to go back and do, call it process mining or understand what's working in your organization. So imagine you're upselling a product and then AI goes and says, hey, what's working for your organization? Scans all of your conversations, emails, outcomes, whatnot, comes back with this recipe. That was always an almost intractable problem in its own, right? Intelligence. How do you even know this? And this is just phase one. And now what if you can go and be this like, hey, from this, create me whatever, call it an agent or a system or an AI process that now goes back and helps or automates the people. So now if you know how to sell product X, it basically goes to every one of your deals and says, hey, with this deal, we should be doing that. In the past, they used to call it next best action, but next best action was always like limited to some sort of like a very high prescriptive stuff, or it was kind of getting confused with like such. And now specific to this, what I learned about this is the blueprint that you want to do, apply it at scale, see how it works and close the loop again and again and improve, and close this loop. So I feel this is sort of the next generation of how people, maybe potentially run repeatable businesses in general, but since I'm mostly kind of concerned with revenue organizations, definitely the way to run revenue organizations moving forward.
The way I practice things are maybe quizzes, maybe back and forth live human role plays, maybe in front of my mirror. And then the way we apply things is on the live call, the live customer interaction, the live discussion. The issue is these three pieces have always been completely fragmented. At the enterprise layer, learning is restricted to my LMS, maybe my CMS if I'm in the sales board. Practicing is cobbled together things with enablement and a human in the loop. And doing is my actual call, Zoom, Gong, etc. Our vision at Udly is build a single platform that ties all three together in a really simple way. I come to Udly, my AI coach, let's call it Seth AI, explains concepts to me, right? So I'm onboarding at Google and here's like, Varun, welcome to Google. Here are the 5 things you need to know. We call ourselves Nooglers. Here's our mission. Here's our vision. Here's the questions you have. The same way a manager would onboard me or teach me stuff, my Udly coach is now doing. I'm learning with the AI. I can interrupt it, you can fast forward, it's interactive, I can go back to it. Then my coach is like, cool, Varun, it seems like you're ready for game time. Let's go practice. And then hyper-realistic simulations. This can be multi-persona with a buying committee. This can be when my coach is on the call and saying, no, Varun, you watched number 2. It could be a single role play where I got to share my screen and do a demo certification. So I learn with my AI coach, I practice with my AI role plays, and then I go and I apply the actual thing. This could be anywhere, in person, on a call, etc. Udly closes the loop between all three things. So what I learn is tied to what I practice. Then based on what I actually do, let's call it my Gong call, Udly will create custom coaching, custom role plays, and say, hey, let's walk through that Gong call with your AI coach. And not just like some random scorecard. My AI coach would share its screen and say, Varun, let's scroll to minute 45 and watch it together and cringe together. What were you thinking when you handled that competitive objection? The same way a human would. And then based on minute 45, it will create custom training, learn, practice, do, learn, practice, do, learn, practice, do. That's the loop that we're closing at Udly.
And I coming from it, like I know that you guys are focusing on go-to-market, and we benefit greatly for the work that and the focus that you have there. The thing I think makes you stand out is that learning focus at the end of the day. You're building for a learner to make a learner better and to have them grasp the concept in whatever way possible. And that really resonated with me back when we met and we were talking about this. And I think it's a superpower when we go into conversations around go to market, because I know the partner that I have on the role play side isn't trying to just run a role play for a salesperson. You're trying to help people learn.
I see a lot of people talking about how AI can save you time, or AI can do this task for you, or AI can do that, which I think is super important, and there's value there. But what I don't see a lot of people talking about is where AI can also help you become a better version of yourself, a better seller, a better sales leader, a better whatever position it is that you hold, by not only just taking some things off your plate, but saying, hey, when you sent that email, here's a few areas where it could have been tighter, or when you had that call, here's a few ways that you could have done this section better. And actually, having real-time feedback to a lot of things that we've never really had feedback on in the sales world. The second piece that is pretty different, but it's where I kind of see sales tech going. And with the different roles that I hold, one of the biggest challenges I see when it comes to sales technology is adoption or lack of adoption, right? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it, but some reps just aren't used to using the tools that a lot of reps are going to have to use the next few years to be successful. But what I'm excited about is I see AI is not just another tool or type of technology to learn, but almost like an orchestration layer that manages the technology for the reps. So what I mean by that is, let's say a rep is using a CRM, they're using an email and calendar tool, or they're using a database tool. They have all this technology out there that they have to learn. And that's hard enough as it is as a rep to do your main job and that. In the future, what I see is there's these tools like Claude or Codex by ChatGPT or whatever it is that you can connect to. And as long as you know how to ask for what you're looking for, you can go and do that work. And I see that being a huge advantage as we look at how do we improve sales tech adoption so it becomes easier for a rep to integrate and operate with these tools rather than it just being another thing to add to their list of things to learn. So I think those two things are where I'm most excited these days.
So every Monday, when a seller logs into Udemy, for better or for worse, the platform has completely changed, right? They go in and they're like, oh my God, this was not what I did. And I love that. And we are not the only ones with this problem. I think large companies are facing that as well. The way we solve for that is with our everboarding agent. So tactically, the way it works is as soon as I ship anything, our agent will pull from your knowledge sources. So it might be Jira, Slack, GitHub, whatever your developers push changes to. Based on that, the agent will be smart enough and say, okay, great. Here are the 15 changes that happened. Here are the 5 that are most important, right? You change your positioning a bit. You launch this new functionality you need to talk about. And oh my God, you finally released this piece of code that will increase your competitive differentiation. It will automatically create a training tutor. So this is a 5-minute interactive role play. Let's call it Chat AI. Every Monday morning at 8 a.m., my sellers will get a Slack message and a calendar invite saying, here's your 5 minutes of training for the week. Literally, that's it. They click on it. Chat AI is like, Varun, welcome aboard. Here are the 5 things that changed last week. Boom, 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 boom. I can skip around. I can say, I got it. I don't care about this. It's all interactive. It's video-based. It's not passive, multiple choice, read a PDF, complete a video. I can be like, I understand all 5. I'm good to go. Then at the end, the AI is like, great, Varun, here are 3 questions. You have this upcoming deal. How are we going to talk about X, Y, and Z? Boom, the seller is good to go. And then for me as a leader, every Wednesday, I get a report saying 95% of your reps are ready for game time based on last week's changes. This is automatic. This is agentic. I think this is the future of the world. Training is no longer the bottleneck sandbag that's dragging everyone back.
So I think one of the things that everybody can relate to is taking a multiple choice exam. We all went through it in school. You go to a class, you pass the class because you take an exam and you show what you know. That is knowledge transfer. So I can recall facts and dates. You might even have a really tough exam where you're having to synthesize multiple points of information together, form an opinion. Maybe you need to demonstrate a skill you've learned. This is where AI role play comes in. And so you can show what you know. That's where most training and learning stops, because the institutions that are putting on the training or hosting it are not where you are going to go and live that information, where you need to retrieve it, where you need to make sure that those skills show up on a Tuesday afternoon discovery call. So that next layer is embedding behaviors. And I like to think about this as the accountability layer. For a long time in the industry, what I would hear is we need to be in the flow of work. We need to put our content in the flow of work, and make reinforcement come up. I'm sure many salespeople and revenue leaders remember when I think it was QStream first came out, and like, we're going to send you text messages and basically take those multiple choice assessments and break them down into a text message. And like, that was the idea of micro learning, to reinforce concepts. Now, spaced learning and repetition absolutely helps you with recall. But what we found in the academic research is that doesn't necessarily correlate to skills implementation at work. So you can remember what to do, you can know what to do, but you're not going to do it unless the environment supports it. So when I'm talking about embedding behaviors and where that knowing doing gap starts to open up, it's because the environment you go back to working in doesn't have the visibility and reminders and prompts in place to cue you to form those new habits. You could have a really well-trained manager who knew Sandler, who could go on a ride along and give great feedback. But there are so many failure points in that model: manager availability, their knowledge of the methodology, their ability to give good coaching feedback and provide insights. That is like I mentioned before, it's still really critical, but the technology that exists today lightens the load and reduces the failure point on the managers, right? So that, I think, is really critical. The other thing that I think is really interesting and nuanced about writing methodology measurement for machines. These machines are not designed to track like emotions or any type of sentiment. And we know that people buy emotionally and justify intellectually. And that's part of the core of what Sandler teaches you to get at, is to make that emotional connection, build those strong relationships. So finding ways to measure that through these technologies, you have to be looking at it from so many different angles, be able to say, okay, an upfront contract starts at the beginning of the call, but maybe like there's a slight side quest because you're adapting to somebody joining the meeting late, somebody has to leave early, you've got to recover and bring that back in. So you need to cover all of those interesting edge conditions of human behavior and what happens in a real live call, so that you are looking at the whole picture. And that is fundamentally very challenging to do. Now, we've made attempts in the past where we would have keyword trackers, like if time or, outcome, or like some of those like buzzwords were included, we were looking for those, but they were so limited in what they would actually catch, and they would misfire more often than not.
It's fascinating to think about how that works, because like, we see our franchisees and we see others spend a lot of time learning it. The way it happens, the magic would happen in an individual. Like, I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, I just need one. I just need two people to really get it and it would pay for itself.
Everybody's talking AI, so it's no surprise that I'll speak about something related to AI. But the World Cup is coming up, and I think it was the chief operating officer of the U.S. soccer on some podcast or video cast or something like that. But he was talking about the implications of AI for soccer, and he basically goes into this whole analysis very, very positively about how AI is being used to help them scout players anywhere on the planet through video, and how this is just a huge leap, right? Like, think about that role of the scout in any major sport. You're on planes, you're watching film and these kinds of things. Like, you are very much limited in that capacity by the cost and the resource of the individual human. But AI, they basically can watch any game from around the world. They can key in on the specific kinds of skills that they're looking to fill gaps on their own teams. and even read a lot of the things that you may not pick up with your eye, the patterns of a player over time and how they perform at different points in the match and that kind of thing, and against different kinds of competition. So, of course, like any good B2B leader, you see the whole world through the lens of your B2B sales, and that'd be like the most natural thing. But I truly mean it. But the part of that video that stood out to me was that he actually pivoted at the end and he said, what this means, though, isn't that the scout becomes less valuable to us. The scout actually becomes incredibly valuable to us in a different way, because it allows us, that scout, to then key in on the intangibles, basically. Like how does the player take coaching? What's their body language after a bad play? And like any coach or managing director of a team's looking at you, going like, that's really, there's a lot of those X factors that you're never going to be able to quantify or see. And so as I think about what that means, and even some of the conversations you and I have and the research that we've been doing, yeah, the implication that AI is just going to remove the salesperson or remove so much of the human, I think is totally wrong. And I believe that in this world, like, the human becomes even more valuable because the AI is making those measurable, those patterns, those kinds of things cheap. The unmeasurable things becomes the whole ball game for them. And so, to me, I guess the innovative thing that I'm seeing, it's spending a lot of time in my head on, is a reversal of how sales technology's always worked. It's actually looking at how do we justify even more and amplify the value of the human in a more empathetic and real way, to be able to take advantage of what the human does versus the technology, and really how those two work together.
The more you think about the topic, the harder it gets when you really think about it, right? Realize, wait, the one thing I hear, especially in the CRM world, when I'm building sales processes for different sales teams, is I hear we're a little bit unique, right? I hear it right. And there's truth to that. Sales is not hey, you start here every single time. This happens, that happens. And it's always that process.
Yeah.
Times you're working with a new client, sometimes you're working with a current client. Those are two different sales processes, two different sets of steps that you go through. So, like, how you actually deploy the skills, where you deploy the skills, how you're talking to a client that you have a relationship with when you take them through a pain funnel versus a new client. Those are two different things. So we had to do a lot of revising and testing and just taking a look at how are they scoring and putting in qualifiers and details to say, hey, when this happens, look for this. When that happens, look for this, to where, we've developed, like you said, these 9-page or very long and extensive prompts that kind of call out all the different use cases where skills can be applied, as well as the watch outs, the things to look for, so that it's not just, hey, did I take this person through a pain funnel, but it's looking for the different steps. It's saying what it should look for and what it shouldn't look for. It's looking for what the buyer language in response should be to that. So it's a lot more, ideally, a lot more accurate and a lot easier to trust that as a sales leader, that if it's saying, hey, this rep is here, you can say, okay, well, maybe I should focus coaching here for this rep and there for that rep. So you actually have something that you can use.
Yeah, it's not like very easy to go into an LLM and get a summary back on something that'll give you generally decent feedback. It feels like the difficulty becomes when you try to tie that to a score, and then tie that to a score across 30 calls, 20 calls, 10 calls. So to do that really well is very, very different than just like, hey, give me feedback.
Completely. Well, and especially, like, I think we're a little bit lucky because we're getting to do it within the realm of Sandler, and most of they're following some form of a structured process. But, I'm sure a lot of sales leaders could even say, there's a lot of my reps that take their clients through different sales processes on different days for different deals when they maybe shouldn't. So there's a lot of just things that you had to we had to account for as we built these, but also we're able to at least help sales leaders identify with a level of accuracy. Are they trying to do the skills? And if they're trying them, how well are they doing them? Which I think is really the feedback that a leader needs to understand. Is this training working? Is the investment worth it? And what are we getting from it?
It was a good testament to, like, and we're actually doing some work over the product, but the idea is, like, each time there's new technology, LLMs, H is basically kind of automated LLMs, but LLM, better speech to text, all of these things you're always going to orient this into sort of how do you drive outcomes. Now, the alternative is always you're going to build it yourself, right? You can build anything yourself. You can build Zoom yourself, Slack, Microsoft, Gong. I don't know if you can build Anthropic yourself, but you can easily kind of build things yourself. Most revenue organizations don't feel like in the business of building software, rightfully so in my mind. Why they appreciate us kind of packaging all of the value, making sure that we host it, we maintain it. We actually calibrate it in a way that drives the outcome versus you having to kind of try to do it yourself. Very, very few organizations can build the stuff. And even if they can, even a smaller portion of them can actually get it to a place where it drives outcomes. It's very easy to quote unquote build an agent on your machine. Can you actually roll it out to 200 people and make sure it actually works consistently? I mean, this is really, really hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's we're kind of getting pulled into with the LLMs and do it yourself into the like I can do everything thing. And I mean, we'll swing right back to it. I think it's more talk about doing everything, but when it comes back to it, where I'm going to apply resources, where you should apply resources as a good fiduciary to your business is to what you're good at. And like, we're in that situation. It's why we're on the phone. Like we aren't good. We do not have the competency to do what Gong does. We do have the competency to understand what a technology can do and how we apply it to make our business better. That's always ended up being the way that works best. Why would you invest in resources, even if you could, to manage that part of it? And the thing that I've always seen with that, like working with clients around it, is I'm going to build it myself. You give me the requirements, and then maybe now it's 3 months. I give you that, and then within 3 months, when you've built it, it's already out of date, and then nobody wants to work on it anymore because I'm finished. What's the metric that is a true measure of performance? And you and I spent a ton of time hammering things out, really looking at it and trying to figure out what those are. So I want to dig into that. And I think a good starting point for this is for us to talk through some of the obvious ones that people use every day, and that the reason why we didn't select them. So let's start with the most used one, which is quota attainment. So from your perspective, like talk me through let's talk a little bit about why that just is not an optimal measure.
Well, let me say, as you're bringing that up and how we came to this measure, I literally looked the other day, I was going through emails to find something else. And I found the first email you sent me on this a little over a year ago. So this truly has been a conversation you and I've been having for over a year, which in some regards, when we talk about the simplicity of where we landed, is really juxtaposed against the complexity that you're working against when you're trying to find one number. But quota attainment in particular, I've become really passionate about quota attainment in the sense that the more that you dig into it, and I think most people would probably believe this, but it's a pretty an imperfect number, maybe is a kind way to say it. But you realize like it basically it's really two numbers that are kind of hidden under one thing. I think it's showing you, or it's trying to tell you how good the salesperson is, but then also how good of a guess the setting of the quota was. And you can never really pull those two apart. And so when most sellers have a quota that doesn't fit a lot of the characteristics of their territory, the characteristics of the deals that they're up against, or the shape of their way they perform, the attainment's mostly grading the people who set the quotas, not the people that are actually carrying them. So to me, quota attainment really is only a good measurement of how good your planning team is at guessing the number. It doesn't really tell you how good your salespeople are. In fact, in some of our research at Vericent over the last year, we found this statistic that only about 69% of sellers are carrying a quota that doesn't match the opportunity in their territory. So there's a huge mismatch even in the quota world. That attainment is built on a number that's wrong most of the time, and it doesn't account for a lot of the conditions that really go into it.
Yeah, I mean, companies, it's not an easy thing to do, but companies are perpetually bad at it, and there's a spectrum. So there's this assumption with quota attainment that everybody sets quota at the same level, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. Yeah, so it's like, why introduce the variable that on the seller that has nothing to do with the seller? So like that to me, as we were going through it, and having done a ton of analysis around quota attainment numbers it is so true what you said. It is the person setting the number that is much, much more likely to ensure its accuracy. Like I had companies that were within like plus or minus 5% of their quotas, and others that were plus or minus 150% of quota. So yeah. So X that one off. If you're using that, there are very clear reasons why you do quota. We won't get into on this call. You want your quotas, but really the reason that you have quotas ideally is to be able to deploy the potential in your company. From I did a number I have to hit, I have to deploy it to my sales team, and ideally you deploy it favorably. That's the reason there, but it is not the best way to tangibly see if a seller is producing at the level that allows you to that says whether they're a good or a bad seller. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at innovativerevenueleader.ai. The Innovative Revenue Leader is sponsored by Sandler, a Trilliad company. Sandler provides top corporate sales and business development training while empowering sales professionals and leaders to master the craft of selling at all levels.